Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Harris. With me are my guys, Mike Teglier and Kyle Yates. You can find us on Twitter at DanHarris80, at Mike Teglier NFL, and at Kyle Y NFL. Gentlemen, happy Monday. How you doing?
What up?
I'm doing a lot better than Tags is. We were talking about this earlier. He's got snow where he is.
You know, I saw flurries. It's not sticking yet, so it's okay. But you know what? I'm going to embrace the snow this year because it's going to be my last year in Illinois. So when I go out to Tennessee, I'm going to get snow maybe once or twice a year. They're going to shut down everything in town, and I'm going to enjoy the hell out of that because white snow looks fantastic. It's when you drive on it and it turns to that brownie mush. It's just not fun at that point.
Are you officially moving to Tennessee, by the way?
Well, I mean, I can't move in the middle of the NFL season for obvious reasons.
Of course.
But,
I feel like that was a dig at me.
As soon as the season is over, I will be. We're going to start looking out there. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Well. All right. A reason to go down to Nashville at least, somewhere close. All right,
yeah, about fantastic. Like a half hour outside of Nashville is where we're looking.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, it is just raining here still in New England, so I'm lucky enough to have avoided the snow. But I know it's coming soon. Winter is coming, as we all know. I'm not looking forward to that. But anyway, how do you guys feel about the waiver wire this week? Because feels pretty weak to me. I don't know about you guys. This is not a week where I'm really excited about all the pickups. What about you, Tags?
Yeah, I'm with you. I've been that way, though, through a lot of the year, and it just feels like a lot of the guys that you even consider, they're just on rosters already, and there's a lot of borderline guys that might be 50% owned, where we get tweets from people saying, well, would you pick up this guy if he was available? And I'm like, oh, well, we didn't think he was available. So it's like, it's a really tricky year. There are a few names on the waiver wire this week that actually can make a difference, and Yates, I know Yates is a little bit higher on this waiver wire than we are.
Is that true, Yates? This is a good one for you.
I don't think there's any like top tier guys that we're saying like spend significant fab to go get, but I feel like it's a deep waiver wire comparative to what we've had recently. I feel like it's a deeper one.
Well, there certainly are some wide receivers, but again, like last week with Boston Scott, for example, we knew that guy was somebody you could pick up and could potentially not win you a week, but really be somebody who you knew you can rely on. I'm not sure I feel that way this week, but we'll get into it. Now, the only big item of news, there are a bunch of injuries that we are waiting to hear about in terms of the severity. We don't know yet, but we will touch on the vast majority of them in the waiver wire show because they're going to impact, of course, some of your pickups. The one thing that we now know for sure is that Odell Beckham Jr. is out for the season with a torn ACL. Tags, you and I talked about it last night on the Sunday night recap show. I didn't get a chance to talk about it with Yates. Now, this is going to impact our waiver wire decisions. As you know, we'll talk about one receiver who becomes enticing as a pickup, or at least somewhat. But Yates, give me your very quick breakdown on how this affects the rest of the Cleveland offense in terms of, are you moving Jarvis Landry up your rest of season board? Are you moving Kareem Hunt? Do you think they rely even more on the run game? How about the tight end? So how does this generally impact your feelings on the Cleveland offense?
Yeah, it doesn't really change much with the running back and tight end situation. So tight end is obviously dependent upon Austin Hooper, right? If Hooper can come back pretty quickly, of course, having the appendicitis surgery, I have no idea when he's going to be back. But Harrison Bryant can be a fine fill-in option for you. Kareem Hunt kind of just stays the same. He'll go back to his high-end RB2 role when Nick Chubb comes back. I think that they're saying after the Week 9 bye is when we can expect Nick Chubb back. This does affect the wide receivers, though. Obviously, you have Jarvis Landry moving up my board slightly. He's now a high-end wide receiver 3 is probably where I'd be ranking him. And then Rashard Higgins that we're going to talk about here is someone that I am looking at personally. He's shown that he can step into a larger role when he gets the opportunity. So he was someone that I had on a couple of dynasty rosters, kind of just hanging there at the bottom of my bench, just because I know that he could contribute if he got the opportunity. Donovan Peoples-Jones, not really. I think he steps into that Rashard Higgins role, right, where the next guy up, he'll see some snaps when they go to 11 personnel, but otherwise, I don't think you need to be rushing out there to pick up Donovan Peoples-Jones. Rashard Higgins, I'm sure that we're going to talk about.
Yeah, Higgins is certainly one of the top guys available on my list. I do think he's somebody who can provide rest of season value, but again, that's sort of where we are. It's like Higgins is not somebody who I'm like, boom, this guy is going to really help me win a week or win a league. And he's one of the top pickups for me this week. So that kind of sums up how I feel about it. I will just very quickly say, because you mentioned Austin Hooper, we did talk about him briefly on Friday's podcast with Dr. Chow. And he did suggest that almost certainly he's going to be out this week, but that he should be able to come back after the bye. Okay. I don't want to put words in his mouth, and I'll ask him again about it on Friday. But that is how you should be looking at Hooper Anyway, let's get into it. As always, you guys know this is a waiver wire show, but if you really want to make sure that you're getting the most out of your waiver wire pickups, you should use our waiver assistant over at fantasypros.com/myplaybook. You can identify the top players to add in your league. You can view the percentage of experts who would add that player to your roster, and you can get a detailed analysis of the impact on your team. Again, fantasypros.com/myplaybook. Check out the waiver assistant. It's really helpful, particularly if you're like us and you're in a ton of leagues. It's great to have just advice on each one of them specifically. All right, guys, usual game plan here. We're going to talk about the best waiver wire pickups at each position. Start with the running back, then go to wide receiver, then quarterback, then tight end. Then we'll talk about our top 5 overall, our top QB and DST streamers. And then we'll do drop or keep like we like to do, where we'll talk about 10 fringe rosterable guys. And you guys tell me if we'll drop or keep. So let's start at the running back position. Tags, who is your top running back add off the waiver wire?
I mean, at risk of sounding like an idiot again, I'm going to say Carlos Hyde. Mm-hmm. I mean, the last time that we picked up Carlos Hyde off the waiver wire was because Chris Carson was supposed to miss multiple weeks with a knee sprain, and as it turns out, Carlos Hyde missed the next week, and Carlos Hyde actually played. So the joke's on us, I guess. But Carlos Hyde was someone that walked into 19 opportunities once Chris Carson went down last night in that game. So he was the clear backup running back. Like, there is no timeshare between Travis Homer and him. It's him. DJ Dallas is going to contribute on some passing downs. That's fine. But Carson is dealing with what they're calling a foot sprain, which sounds a lot like Joe Mixon, who is week to week and expected to miss 2 games. So I'm going to assume that Chris Carson's going to miss 2 games. Now, again, we do an article every single week, the 3 of us, where we talk about the best waiver wire pickups, and you guys can see that on fantasypros.com, where we kind of go through and highlight the players that we think there's a chance that you waste your fab on them. We don't have a whole lot of information on Chris Carson right now, and I'm guessing that we're not going to get anytime soon. But as of right now, I'm assuming that he's going to miss 2 weeks, and therefore Carlos Hyde, even though he has a matchup against the 49ers this week, a guy that walks into 19 opportunities, you kind of have to grab him off the waiver wire, so he's my number 1.
Yeah, he's my number 1 too, and again, absolutely correct. And there was nothing that could have indicated more that Chris Carson was going to miss the game the last time we talked about this, because they had a bye coming up. So it was like, well, of course, yep. They'll play it safe. And then not only that, but he played through it and played well. And again, as you said, Hyde missed it. How about for you, Yates? Is Hyde your number 1 running back pickup? He's
at number 2 for me right now, but he would shoot up to number 1 if we did get official word on Chris Carson. Now, it comes with the caveat, I'm uncomfortable ranking Carlos Hyde at number 1 because of what happened last time, where we said, okay, well, yeah, Carlos Hyde, pick him up, spend, what did we say, 20 to 30% of your fab. Oh, wait, hold on, Chris Carson's superhuman, and he came back and played that week. So I want that clarity first before I confidently say, hey, go spend a lot of fab, again, to go pick up Carlos Hyde. But I do agree that if he is going to be the starting running back for 1-2 weeks, then go get him, because you need that starting running back right now.
I don't think you're giving us enough credit, man. I mean, we said whatever it was, 20%, but I mean, now that all comes to fruition. Now, if you're rostering Carlos Hyde, you're like, yeah, beat the waiver wire, nailed it. He is my number 1 as well. But I share your concerns about what we're going to see, mainly because, again, we are recording this on Monday at roughly 3 o'clock Eastern. We do not have anything other than quote-unquote foot sprain for Chris Carson. So we don't know the details of it. You might know more by the time you listen to this. Certainly, hopefully, you'll know more by the time you have to actually put in your waiver claims. But he is my number 1 pickup overall, which we'll get to, Carlos Hyde, and my number 1 running back. And that sums up how I feel about this week. There's so much trepidation with Hyde for good reason, but he's still the guy that you have to go past. Don't forget, by the way, Tags, you mentioned Homer. Homer left the game as well with a knee contusion, so he could be out next week, depending on what happens. And after that, it's really just going to be Hyde and DJ Dallas, assuming that Carson is out. And as you mentioned, Tags, Hyde had 19 total opportunities and performed well with them in the game. Looked good. He's a perfectly capable backup. And they're past their bye. So you've got San Francisco on tap, then Buffalo. I mean, if Hyde gets the starting job, and assuming that Chris Carson is out, then he's going to be ranked as an RB2. There's no doubt about it in that situation. So let me ask you guys, what percent of your fab you're willing to put on them? Start with you, Tags.
Running backs are hard to find, starting running backs especially. So I'm going to say 25% at the risk that Chris Carson doesn't come back for a couple weeks, and the risk that he's maybe not the same player. Because Carson has talked about that. He said, I he said he's basically trying to dispel the notion that he can't get through 16 games, so he's trying to push through it. And if he misses a game, it's like they're going to hold him out. They're going to make sure he's right. This is a playoff team. They need to make sure they're healthy. So why rush him back if Carlos Hyde is playing well like he did last night? So I'm willing to go up to 25 if you need a running back. I mean, you could do 30% if you want to.
That's high. That's high. I mean, that's higher than I would have expected. Are you there too, Yates, or are you a little more cautious?
No, I'm definitely more cautious, and that's the reason why I have Matt, too, in my running back rankings. So I think with Carlos Hyde, though, yeah, I have him at 12% right now. But if we get clarity that, we're going to get, a game or two out of Carlos Hyde, then I'm fine going up to 20, 25%.
Yeah, right now I have him at 15% with basically the expectation that Carson is probably going to miss a week. But guys, I mean, look, with Gio Bernard last week, right? We talked about it we didn't know that Mixon was going to miss until Friday, right? Because it was just no word. Well, I still don't know exactly what's wrong with his foot at this point. And I was in the league, guys, and I wasn't even that running back desperate, but everybody else was, and we had to put in our bid on Wednesday, and I put in like a fairly significant bid. Like I probably went up to, I think, 20%. Nobody else bid on him. Like it was a wasted, you can see, and I was like, I don't know what people are doing at this point. Like when there is a guy like this who even could have the potential, you've got to go at least 15%. So I'm at 15% right now with Hyde. If we get news that Carson is going to miss more than a game, then I'm going to be where you are, Tags.
Where would you guys be if we said it was 2 games that Carson's going to miss? Where would you guys go to?
I think in that case, I'd probably go to 25%.
Yep.
I think that's
25 to 30.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys would be more in line with me, and that's what I'm expecting.
Yeah, and that's fine. And I think, again, and not to speak for Yates, where we come from is the first time we talked about Hyde on the Waiver Wire show, where you were like, because the Chris Carson injury, remember, number one, that first one that he had where his knee got twisted looked terrible.
Oh, yeah, he looked
number
like he was done for the year.
Schefter actually put out a tweet while we were recording that episode that said he's out 1 to 2 weeks, or he's expected to miss 1 to 2 weeks. So you even got confirmation that he was going to be out, and then the guy not only played but played well. So I'm definitely kind of at this point. I think the way I think about it is, of course, as we always say, you need a running back because you got to start a running back. Do what you need to do on spending fab, but there are going to be more situations like this going forward. So I don't want to just willy-nilly kind of say, well, I'm expecting this. I need more information. If he is out 2 games, I agree with you. I'm in line with you. So, Yates, who's your number 1 running back pickup then, if it's not Hyde?
Yeah, I'm going with Tevin Coleman. Tevin Coleman expected to be back in Week 8 or has a chance of being back in Week 8, and you're looking at the San Francisco 49ers running back room now, and you're saying, okay, Raheem Mostert on IR, Jeff Wilson with a high ankle sprain, correct me if I'm wrong there, guys, and then now McKinnon, like, what the heck happened to McKinnon? Like, he's not even a factor in this offense. So now you're looking at, legitimately, it's JaMycal Hasty, Jerick McKinnon, who's not even a factor, and then now Tevin Coleman coming back into the lineup has a clear chance to see significant touches. And again, it's kind of the same argument with a lot of these other running backs. That if you're getting touches, like, you're going to be a valuable fantasy asset. So again, I'm not going crazy. I said at the beginning of the show that there's not this clear-cut, like, locked and loaded, hey, let's spend 25 to 30% of our fab to go get for me personally. So Tevin Coleman is a 15% bid, but yet he's going to be a starting running back. He'll be the pass catcher out of the backfield. So I'm a little bit more optimistic. I think that you guys are on the other side here, though.
Yeah, Tags, what do you think?
I would rather do a lot of different things than pick up Tevin Coleman. And I'm saying that because Shanahan's let us know that he really just doesn't want one running back stealing the show. And Tevin Coleman, even going back to last year, he hasn't topped 12 carries in a game since week 7 of last year. Raheem Mostert kind of took over that role. And then you thought, okay, well, Coleman's going to be using the passing game, right? He hasn't seen more than 4 targets since he joined the 49ers. So I don't see that being a case. So when you look at it and you're just like, in week 1 with Raheem Mostert in the line, I know Mostert was there, but 4 carries, 2 targets in the passing game. JaMycal Hasty has looked pretty good. Jerick McKinnon, the reason that they said they held him out, or they limited his touches yesterday, was because they know he had a big early season workload. What does that even mean? Like, we're 7 weeks into the season. Like, what are we talking about, Kyle Shanahan?
And he didn't play in the beginning of the season. Like, he barely played.
It's so stupid. But whatever. It just goes to show that you cannot trust a 49ers running back. And on top of that, Tevin Coleman's not even good. I mean, even when he gets carries, he doesn't do much with them. I mean, he's like a career, like, probably around 4 yards per carry. He's not an explosive player that's going to break an 80-yard touchdown at any point. Again, he's not very involved in the passing game. None of the 49ers running backs are. So I don't know. I mean, I am with you, Yates, in terms of, like, I have him as a top 5 pickup this week just because running backs are hard to find. But if I don't need a running back to play, I would rather give Tevin Coleman to someone else because he's going to screw them.
So I'm pretty much with you, Tags. He is my second running back to pick up this week, but I have an 8% fab bid on him. And I will ask you guys your fab bid in a second. There are a couple of reasons. Number one, I just don't think I fade injuries. You guys know that about me. We talked about it in the preseason. I always fade injuries. I'm not expecting Coleman to be back. I saw the quote. He has an outside chance, it sounds like. So I don't really expect him to be back. If he is back this week, there's just no way I'm going to feel comfortable starting him. There's no way because he's going to be eased in. Even if they want to give him a huge workload, I don't see it happening in this game. With that said, and this goes a little bit against how I like to think about running backs, but it really more speaks to that there are no great options this week. It's that I think Coleman has a little bit of a chance for longer term value because I do think that if Wilson is out and if Mostert's, injury keeps him out for longer than 3 weeks, because again, Mostert's injury didn't look like anything when it happened. He was on the sidelines. He was still, kind of dancing around them. But, oh, sorry, you're going on IR. If he's out for a longer period of time, I think when you're dealing with JaMycal Hasty and Jerick McKinnon, who probably needs 6 more weeks to recover from his massive early workload, then I think that Coleman has a chance to be somebody who, who Kyle Shanahan is willing to rely on a little bit more than he otherwise would have. So for that reason, he's still a top 5 pickup for me too, Tags. That's what I'm saying. That's why I don't really like this week. Yeah. But it's an 8% bid for me because I'm not expecting him to be a huge factor, if any, this coming week. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Yates.
No, so I mean, if Raheem Mostert was healthy and if we had Jeff Wilson healthy, then that would be something where I would just be like, and Tevin Coleman was coming back off of injury, then that would be something where I'd be like, stay far away. But because it literally is only JaMycal Hasty, an undrafted free agent out of Baylor, and Tevin Coleman, where else is the ball going to go in a run-heavy offense? So I think that looking at Coleman, he has an opportunity here. And again, like you said, if Wilson is going to miss a few weeks here, and we know that Raheem Mostert's on IR, and McKinnon, like you said, needs a few weeks to recover, then the touch, he has more long-term viability. So again, I feel like we spent way too much time talking about Tevin Coleman, but
no, we didn't because that's where we are in this waiver wire situation.
So anyway, he's just someone that I think that you can add and you can get guaranteed touches, whereas with Carlos Hyde, we just don't have that guarantee just yet. That's why Coleman's at 1, Hyde's at 2.
Okay, so and again, Tags, he's your number 2 running back, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So nobody's crazy. I mean, we're not, I get it.
Nobody's crazy.
We are crazy in other ways, but okay. Yeah. First of all, let's do the basics. Yates, your fab bid on Coleman.
Well, I said it like 10 times, so it's like 15%.
So much of my time is spent tuning out and trying to figure out what I could ask Tags. Tags, what's your fab bid? Unless you said it like 30 times. I don't know.
As many times as Yates said the fab bid for him, that's my bid, 10.
Okay, that's fine. And again, I'm at 8, so it's a little different. But let's talk then. Is your number 3 running back pickup this week JaMycal Hasty Yates?
Yes, it is.
Okay, first, so I can get it out of the way early so you don't chastise me when I stop listening to you. How much of your fab are you willing to spend on JaMycal Hasty?
10%.
Tevin Coleman comes back this week. I'm creating a false scenario because I don't expect him to. But let's say Tevin Coleman comes back this week. What would you expect, and there's no way to answer it, the breakdown to be in this running back situation such that you're willing to spend 10% on Hasty and 15% on Coleman?
Are you looking like for my projections or where they would land in my rankings?
Whatever you want. Whatever, the world's your oyster, man. However you want to put it out there.
JaMycal Hasty would probably be a high-end RB3, assuming that McKinnon is just completely out of the picture, because just based off of carries. And then Coleman would probably be a mid-range RB3 because of I do expect that he'll get some receptions out of the backfield. So neither of these guys are ones that I'm saying, hey, let's plug them into your lineup as guaranteed top 12 options. But yet, again, we're talking about some of these other options at the running back position. You need options, so I'll play JaMycal Hasty.
It is worth noting that Hasty looked good. I mean, he looked good when he came in there yesterday. It's not the greatest matchup with Seattle, but Tags, what about you? How do you view Hasty on this week's waiver wire?
I honestly don't want to grab him. I understand what you guys are saying, and honestly thinking about it and being like, all right, well, Jeff Wilson's out, Raheem Mostert's out. If Tevin Coleman doesn't play, all of a sudden you kind of have to like him because then it's like a 2-man timeshare, right? And then they have Kyle Juszczyk.
No, you know what's happening. You know what's happening. Jerick McKinnon will get 100% of the running back touches on everybody's bench, and JaMycal Hasty will get 1 carry for -2 yards, and then we'll all be pulling our hair out. I'm sorry.
But to be fair, it's not a good matchup against Seattle. Seattle's been actually pretty tough on running backs, so I'm not. Again, this backfield does not make me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. I know that they're efficient when they do get carries, and that's why if you were to tell me that Tevin Coleman was out, sure, I'd bring Hasty up, and I might be willing to put 10 fab on him, just right around that same Tevin Coleman area. But there's just so much uncertainty here, and I don't know. My guess is that McKinnon all of a sudden walks back into like 75% of the touches next week.
Right. Yeah. So right now, Hasty is my third running back pickup as well. I have him as an 8% bid, same as Tevin Coleman. Like, this is something where I don't really know which guy is necessarily going to have more value this week or next week. I think they are both kind of like you said, Yates, guys you can probably throw out there in a pinch. And as you said, Tags, also, it's not the best matchup this week anyway. So I'm not trying to get either one of these guys necessarily, right? Like, I don't think that bid gets either one of these guys. And I'm fine with that, essentially, is where I'm coming out. How about you then, Tags? Is somebody higher than you than Hasty for running back pickups as your number 3?
I mean, Frank Gore, because at least Frank Gore, we know what his role is. You're not grabbing him because you think he's going to win you a fantasy league or anything like that. You're grabbing him because you need a guy that's going to get you a dozen touches or so, and he's that guy. The Kansas City Chiefs are not a good run defense. We talk about this. They've allowed, I think it is the fourth most total yards to running backs through 7 weeks. So it's not a bad matchup coming up. The game script's going to go negative, but Gore did get a couple targets this past week. So I have Gore there above Hasty just because I know exactly what his role is. I know exactly what I'm getting. And you're not really going to be bidding against anybody because if he's still on the waiver wire, that means nobody's grabbing him. So, I mean, you can get him for a couple bucks with fab dollars.
That's interesting to me, Tags, that you would prefer him to Perine, who had a pretty decent day yesterday. I mean, 13 touches, 55 yards, and a touchdown. Gore actually ran well. I think it was 11 for 60 yesterday on the ground. But this did seem, Perine outsnapped Gore pretty substantially here. Yeah. So I'm surprised that you don't want Perine over Gore, Tags.
Well, to be fair, I have not researched that game yet because basically what I'll go do when I write the primer, I go through every game in the previous game and I'll look at the snap counts and the routes run and all that stuff. So if I need to go back and look at that, obviously I need to. I saw Gore was still basically the primary, the 1-2 down back, which is what I expected him going forward. But again, if this game does go negative, I need to look at the pass routes run because if Perine is out there running more routes, then maybe he's the ad because they are going to fall behind in that game. I want to say the initial line on that game, and correct me if I'm wrong, was like 20.5. Is that right?
Yeah,
what?
The early one I heard was 21 or something. Yes, yeah. It's the Jets. Yeah, it's get used to it.
I didn't know that. I haven't.
And it might not be enough.
Yet. Oh my word.
Right. Yeah, I'm gonna hold back my opinion
19.5
on that
right
one.
now on DraftKings.
That's fine. Crush it, Jets. You're right, Tags, on the fact that Gore certainly he got. In the beginning of the game, he was more involved for certain, and he did get the first and second down role, a lot of it. But as the game went on, Perine cut into that first and second down role as it went on, and certainly has always been the third down back. He did get the touchdown, and he was a little more involved. Of course, he's got 3 targets in back-to-back weeks. That's not crazy, but it is something where Perine is kind of on my list down there, but it's not somebody who I want to rely on.
By the way, by the way, I just want to say that I'm glad I'm talking to you guys because I just pulled it up to see, because again, I hadn't researched that yet.
Yep.
Perine has run 31 routes over the last 2 weeks, whereas Gore is at 16. So I might take that back.
Okay, good. We have changed his mind. Yates, was Perine your number 4 or was somebody else in there?
No, I've got Perine at 6 and Gore at 7, and those are really neither of them I'm wanting to add. Wayne Gallman is currently at 4 for me, and that's because I don't have clarity yet on Devontae Freeman's injury. Correct me if you've heard anything, guys, but I haven't heard anything yet. So that's kind of a situation where Gallman, again, could be walking into significant touches, but yet terrible matchup. So he's going to be a guy that you can add if you're absolutely desperate, but I have Gallman as a very, very cheap pickup this week.
Okay, and who was your 5th one then in between him and
It's still J.D. McKissick, but again, he's on bye this week, so once we get past JaMycal Hasty, I'm kind of like, just do whatever you want.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to throw one name out there for you that neither one of you guys has talked about, although Tags, you had mentioned him last night. Duke Johnson, and he's my 4th running back pickup this week, and again, that should tell you all you need to know about where we are for running back pickups this week. I'm not running out to get Duke Johnson, and they're on a bye. But as we have talked about, the trade deadline is coming up. At this point, the Texans are going to be in sell mode. I don't know necessarily whether they're going to be able to find someone to take David Johnson, but you have to assume
alert,
that
they're
David.
not.
Well, that's also a fair spoiler alert, but it is something where I would be willing to see whether or not Duke Johnson can carve out a larger role for himself going forward, as they do most likely try to trade one or two receivers going forward. So for me, Johnson is a guy who I'm going to have out there. Again, I don't even know if I gave, because again, we write the article right before. I'm going to just check to make sure if I gave a bid. Yes, I would go out there and I would bid 2% of my fab on Duke Johnson
big
now.
Big spender.
If I had to. That's what I'm saying. If he's free, essentially, I would. But I would take that chance, him and Perine, basically in the same exact spot for me there. Tags, we talked about it a little bit. Do you think Duke Johnson is, somebody who is worth sort of a stash at this point on the off chance that something works out in Houston?
Well, I brought that up. We did talk about that in the show last night, and about stashing someone like him. But then I started thinking about like the contending teams that might be trading for a running back, and I really don't know of anybody that needs a running back that bad. And let's not pretend that David Johnson is like a game changer. So I think Yates is correct in the aspect that they're not going to find a trade partner for him. They're going to have a lot better opportunity to sell someone like Brandon Cooks or Will Fuller. So those are the guys that you should be looking at is on the move. So maybe Randall Cobb is someone, I know he's a wide receiver, but maybe he's someone that you could add because he might have a floor of 6 to 8 targets if one of those guys were to leave town.
And Tags, what about Wayne Gallman here? Any interest there?
No, I mean, the reason I don't have so much interest is because of the matchup this week against Tampa Bay. It is a absolutely wretched matchup.
Yep.
Like, that team is allowing under 2.8 yards per carry on the season.
It's insane.
It's disgusting. It's just a bad matchup. And I understand there is value in a running back that if Devonta Freeman were to miss time, that Gallman would get 15 touches. So there's value in that. But I have him as my number 6 running back because, again, the matchup is such a low ceiling. It's ugly.
Yeah, no, I have him as my number 6 too. Again, mainly because of the matchup. And Yates, we have no idea. We didn't even know Freeman left that game until, for an ankle. We were like, why isn't he getting these carries? And they're like, oh, P.S., ankle injury. So, and again, even after that, Washington, Philly, bye. It's not like Gallman. I don't see Gallman as really carving out.
The only way, he could be the pass catcher, which he was last week. So that could sustain his value, but again, not crazy about him.
All right, let's go to wide receiver, guys, because there are some notable pickups here that, I feel like I would be willing to add, again, not spending significant fab. So let's start with you this time, Yates. Who's your number 1 wide receiver pickup?
Yeah, I have Jalen Reagor at number 1, activated off IR, and now is going to be walking into an offense that desperately needs him. You saw Deshaun Jackson. Now, he's out, right? I don't know if he was placed on IR yet, but he's out.
He's out 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah. So
he might have played his last down in the NFL,
yeah, I think so. So now you're looking at a significant role here for Jalen Reagor, and this was the argument coming into the season, and when they drafted Jalen Reagor was, where's he going to play? Because you have him as the potential Deshaun Jackson replacement, and then you did have Greg Ward, who was playing the slot, and he played well last year. And so now now the question becomes, all right, where does Jalen Reagor play? Well, we have the answer now. It's right in Deshaun Jackson's vacated spot, so on the outside. So now you have Travis Fulgham, you have Jalen Reagor, now Greg Ward staying in the slot. And I think that Reagor can carve out a significant role for himself. He showed flashes when he was healthy to begin the season, and I think that he can be someone that you can plug in. But again, I mentioned that not significant guys up towards the top, but it's very deep. So all these guys, like Jalen Reagor's a 10% fab bid. Dan, did you hear that? Jalen Reagor's a 10% fab bid for me.
So Yates, how much fab would you bid? Sorry, go ahead.
A 10% fab bid, but that's kind of the same for these top 5 guys, where I'm just kind of saying, yeah, they're all in the same range. I'm fine with either one of them.
Okay, how about you, Tags? Is Reagor your number 1 wide receiver pickup?
No, he's not. Sterling Shepard's my number 1. Here's a fun stat, okay? Sterling Shepard has now seen at least 6 targets in each of his last 18 games, if we remove that game where he had to leave early against the Bears.
Okay.
That's ridiculous. That is not...
Dan just go, okay.
That's not volume you find on the waiver wire, period. It's not. If you're telling me I'm getting 6 targets as an absolute floor from a player, I am willing to pick him up, even in a tough matchup against Tampa Bay. But understand that against Tampa Bay, even though it is a tough matchup, opponents have thrown the ball 64.1% of the time, which is the 4th most in the NFL, which has allowed a lot of wide receivers to hit double-digit PPR points. So Sterling Shepard is the best wide receiver on the New York Giants. I say that. Darius Slayton is going to play more of that field stretching role. He's fine in what he does, but Sterling Shepard, I do believe, is the more complete receiver. So finding a number 1 wide receiver on the waiver wire who's seeing a floor of 6 targets, there's value in that. So he's my number 1 receiver.
Okay, first, sorry if I missed it. What's your fab bid on Shepard?
You missed it when you said, okay. Like, you were so disinterested in my fun stat. But no, Sterling Shepard, I have him up at 15%.
Okay. All right. So one last question, Tex. Where do you have him roughly ranked in your rest of season rankings then, if we're looking at Shepard and you think he is the best receiver to roster on the Giants?
I do think he's the best receiver, and my rest of season ranking on him is wide receiver 38.
Wow. Okay. Aggressive, but I like it. So Shepard is my number 2. Reagor is not my number 1. I do like Reagor as a pickup. And again, Yates, I think you described it perfectly. It's very, very deep sort of in what we're looking at the waiver wire, but nobody who I'm rushing out to add. The reason I'm not adding Reagor is even though he was activated off IR, I think that just opens the 21-day window, right? For them to actually put him on the roster. So I'm not actually expecting him to play this week, and they have a bye the following week, right? So for me, it's more of a long-term pickup, which I'm fine to do at wide receiver. I think that's much more of a long-term play. But he's up there, but he's not number 1. Nor is Sterling Shepard. My number 1 is actually Brandon Aiyuk, and this really has to do with Deebo Samuel. We do not know the extent, but it is a hamstring strain, so you have to assume that he's going to miss next week's game. Aiyuk, 7 targets, 6 catches, 115 yards last night. We talked about it with the running back. Someone has to get the ball in this offense other than George Kittle. And, you've got injuries at the running back. They're creative with how they use Aiyuk. And I think if he's really essentially the only wide receiver who's going to get involved here, especially with the matchup against Seattle, struggles against wide receivers, he's a guy who I think not only you can plug in immediately, probably as a wide receiver 3 next week if Deebo Samuel is out, but he is somebody who could have more long-term value. It's not a huge difference for me with him and Shepard. I have him at a 15% bid. No, I have him at a 12% bid, and I also have Sterling Shepard at a 12% bid. So it's very much of a 1A, 1B situation. But for me, a guy like Aiyuk is somebody who I feel pretty confident is going to be able to provide immediate value. So let's start with you, Yates. Where do you have Aiyuk in your wide receiver rankings for waiver wire pickups this week?
Yeah, he's at 3 for me, but it's the same fab bid for all 3 of these guys, with Reagor at 1, and then undisclosed player at 2, and then Brandon Aiyuk at 3. So yeah, I feel like switch it if you want to put Aiyuk at 1. I feel bad because we talked about Aiyuk previously on a waiver wire podcast, and we said, you can pick him up, and I was a little bit hesitant, but then he did perform. And then we said, all right, you can drop him. And then now, with Deebo Samuel going out, it's just been a yo-yo effect here with Brandon Aiyuk this season. But if he really is the only option there outside of George Kittle in the receiving game, then you have to be talking about him as a pick, an asset that you can pick up. So, but again, I'm not going crazy. I'm fine adding him. That's someone that you can plug into your flex next week. But outside of that, I'm not really rushing out there to pick up Brandon Aiyuk.
How about you, Tags? Is Aiyuk your number 2 pickup, or is it Reagor or something?
Oh, he's number 2 for me.
Okay.
Especially if you need a wide receiver for this week through bye weeks or something like that. Brandon Aiyuk, the matchup against Seattle, they've played 6 games so far, Seattle has, and they've already allowed 14 wide receivers to finish as the wide receiver 31 or better against them. So basically you're saying Aiyuk he's clearly a wide receiver 3 this week. If not, you could probably make the case that he should be ranked as a wide receiver 2, considering the volume that wide receivers have had against the Seahawks. I don't know if I'm willing to do that for a rookie, but at the same time, I mean, he's performed when he's gotten the opportunity. So if Deebo Samuel's out, like we're expecting him to be, if the running backs are limited to 2 starting running backs with Jerick McKinnon and JaMycal Hasty, all of a sudden it's like, again, these targets have to go somewhere, and Aiyuk would probably be locked into maybe 8 targets against the Seahawks, a team that's been absolutely crushed by wide receivers. So, yeah, I do like him as a pickup, and he's my number 2.
Yeah, and especially because Seattle is going to put up points one way or another. So the 49ers are going to need points. They're going to have to throw, and again, they're down their top couple of running backs here. So I do like him this week. Tags, I sorry, did you give your bid on Aiyuk? And if not, what
I
is
hadn't yet. And like learning more about this Deebo Samuel injury, once we find out more about it, I have him at 10 right now, but I'm willing to go higher than that if you really need wide receiver help, if you really need a win right now. There's a lot of things that come into factor right now, like in terms of like how bad you need a win and how much you value a player on a week-to-week basis, because I don't think Aiyuk is someone that you're going to be able to grab and start every single week. But, you know, for this coming week, I absolutely love him.
The big reason why it's tough for me to always spend big on a wide receiver, unless there is like legitimately a handcuff situation, like essentially thought it was with Chase Claypool that worked out briefly, did not work out so much this week, is because in every league I find, I don't know about you guys, like Cole Beasley is just always sort of sitting there out on the waiver wire necessarily. And, you know, now he's too widely rostered at this point, especially with John Brown suffering through an injury and he had a big game. But it's somebody who I feel like I can always find somebody to fill in on a weekly basis. That's why I'm never willing to really go crazy over a wide receiver unless I think he could be a game changer down the road. I'm not sure Aiyuk fits that bill. So for me, even though he is my number one this week, he tops out at 12%. Okay, so did I miss your unnamed number 2, Yates? Did we talk about that yet?
Yeah, Rashard Higgins is going to be my number 2 pickup here at the wide receiver position, and it's because he has more long-term appeal. Now that we have clarity that OBJ is out for the entire season with a torn ACL, Rashard Higgins is going to be the starting wide receiver in 2 wide receiver sets outside of opposite of Jarvis Landry. So I think Rashard Higgins, we saw I've talked about it, what he can do when he has the opportunity, and now he has a clear opportunity in front of him. So as if you needed a player for this week, right, and you needed an option that could go off for this matchup, and then you have some unknowns as far as what it's going to look like when Deebo Samuel comes back, then pick up Brandon Aiyuk. But if you need the more long-term play, that's why I have Rashard Higgins at number 2 instead of Brandon Aiyuk. But again, same fab bid, fine with either one of them. It all depends on what you need.
So just so I could start a little bit of a fight, that means you clearly have Sterling Shepard no higher than 4th. Is that right?
I do have Sterling Shepard at 4.
Can you believe that guy, Tags? I mean, do you want to go after him right now?
I think he's bananas.
It's crazy.
He's off his rocker.
How about Higgins here, Tags?
I mean, Higgins he's going to play in 2 wide receiver sets, but it's not sexy at all. I mean, I don't think you're getting a floor with him. I don't think you get much of a ceiling with him. This is a team that obviously wants to run the ball a whole lot. They're not going to play the Bengals every week. Looking on the season, wide receivers for the Browns, and that's with Odell Beckham, they average 14.4 targets per game. That's crap. Allen Robinson averages like 13 targets a game. But so it's like when you look at Jarvis Landry and say, okay, he's going to get 6-7 targets per game, that they're going to have a few other players mixed in, like Donovan Peoples-Jones mixed in with a couple targets a game. I don't think he's a bad football player. I really don't. But if he was in an offense, like if the Browns were throwing the ball 35 to 38 times per game, I would say, yes, I'm on board with you here. But it's a team that legitimately wants to throw the ball like 28 to 32 times a game. And there's just not enough volume to go around. Wide receivers, again, they're seeing just a 50% target share in this offense, which is one of the lowest marks in the league. So I'm not high on Higgins at all. I don't see the upside, and I don't think there's a weekly floor that you could start him and say, oh, he's guaranteed to get 6 targets a game.
Yeah, I think I fall on Yates' side here. And I'm not going crazy with Higgins. He's a 10% of my fab bid guy, which I think is what Yates said as well. But 44 snaps yesterday, 6 for 110. You're right, Tags. They're not going to throw the ball quite as much as they did against the Bengals going forward. But they do get the Raiders next week, and the Raiders should be able to put up points and are not great against wide receivers. Then a bye: Houston, Philadelphia, Jacksonville, Tennessee. It's not a bad schedule. Again, with no OBJ, you've got no Hooper at least for next week. And I realize that both tight ends got involved this week, but having that other option, I feel like, is going to be valuable in this offense. So kind of basically what Yates said, and again, 10% of my bid. This is not a go out there, go crazy, but short-term value and potential for long-term value. Yates, did you want to respond in any way to what Tex said?
No, I was just going to bring up the schedule, and you did that. So I like the schedule moving forward. I think that he has a clear opportunity in front of him.
All right, so Yates, just give me your top 4 again. Make sure we hit them all in order.
Jalen Reagor, Rashard Higgins, Brandon Aiyuk, and then Sterling Shepard. So I have all of the Jalen Reagor, Higgins, and Aiyuk is 10% fab, but then I have Sterling Shepard at 8%. Not someone that I'm rushing out to pick up. And because, one, it's this offense. I don't want to invest in this offense. Yes, he could be the best, Giants receiver. What does that really equate to, right? So I think yes, he's going to soak up targets, but he also has not been the model of health. So you could pick up Sterling Shepard, you have him for 2 weeks, and then he gets injured again. So I'm just not super confident in saying, yeah, go pick up Sterling Shepard because he's in a dynamic offense and, that he's been fully healthy. So he has a lot of things going up against him. I'm fine letting someone else roster him.
Okay, Tags, who are your top 4 pickups at wide receiver?
Sterling Shepard, Brandon Aiyuk, Jalen Reagor's at 3, Russell Gage at 4. He's just one of those guys that helps you get through bye weeks. He's not a guy that has much upside, but with Julio Jones back in the lineup, the Falcons' offense is a much more oiled machine. Like, they've been running properly, and Gage has been involved the last couple of weeks, like he was at the beginning of the year. So again, he's not someone that you should be throwing a whole bunch of fab at or anything like that, but just a guy that you can grab to play through some bye weeks. Greg Ward is also in that conversation with Russell Gage. Those guys are side by side, and Ward, you got to think like Jalen Reagor is probably not going to play this week. I don't think he's going to play. Travis Fulgham is fine. He's going to do well against Dallas, but it is Dallas. Dallas has allowed more than one fantasy relevant wide receiver per game. Running backs are not targeted against the Cowboys for whatever reason. Like, legitimately, they just don't score a whole lot of fantasy points through the air. So Greg Ward, with the tight ends, Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz out another week, I just feel like the targets are going to be there against Dallas, where you can play him as a bye week fill-in. That's what these guys are right now. And I feel like they can give you good value, like top 45 wide receiver performances off the waiver wire.
All right, so where do you actually have Higgins ranked, Tags?
6th.
In your 6th. Okay, that's fine. Yates, how do you feel about that? Gage or Ward or anybody else that we haven't talked about yet that you think is worthy of a pickup?
Sure. So I have Russell Gage at 5. I agree with Tags that bye week fill-in, he's a perfect option. He's going to give you a safe floor. I played him in a couple of spots yesterday, was terrified when he went out in the first quarter with his knee injury, and then he came back and actually had a really nice one-handed catch too. So he can produce in this offense. We've seen it. So I think that he's someone that you can plug in, have him at 5. Nelson Agholor is someone that I have at 6. I heard you guys talk about him on the live stream that you did last night. He's producing. We can't deny that. His value comes into play, though, because Bryan Edwards has been out of the lineup. So I have no idea what's going on with Bryan Edwards and why he's missing so much time. But if he continues to, then you could be someone that Agholor could be someone that if you get to Friday, Saturday of next week, and you're like, crap, I don't have, I'm getting some injury concerns here with these players, the injury news with these wide receivers that I'm supposed to start. Agholor will be there on your waiver wire. You can pick him up. Not recommending him as anything more than a 5% pickup, though.
Yeah, Tags, we talked about him briefly last night. Where did he wind up in your waiver wire rankings?
Yeah, I have Agholor as the number 8 wide receiver. So I am starting to come around on the idea that he just might be worth more than we thought. And again, if you guys heard that conversation on the show last night, then you guys know that it's basically a situation where we have to value him a little bit more than Tyrell Williams was being valued last year. And he was, I would say, when he was on the field, he was ranked as a wide receiver 4 or better most weeks. So Derek Carr is actually playing pretty good football right now.
Yeah. Okay, let me throw a couple of names out there other than those guys that we've talked about, because I have gotten a couple of questions from people on Twitter asking about these guys. So you tell me if you have any interest whatsoever. We'll go one by one. How about Preston Williams coming off the bye? You're obviously switching to Tua, so we don't know exactly what that offense is going to look like. He has scored touchdowns in back-to-back games. He is coming off the ACL surgery from last year, so he could just be rounding in the form. Any interest in adding Preston Williams? Start with you, Tags.
No. He's scored in 3 of his last 4 games, but he's only seen 13 targets in those games. I don't think this team is all of a sudden going to start throwing more with their rookie quarterback under center. I know that the game script could go negative or whatever, and lead to pass attempts. But Preston Williams he hasn't, and he's going to be going up against the Rams once he comes back from his bye week, or obviously next week. So it's a terrible matchup. I want nothing to do with Preston Williams right now.
How about you, Yates?
Yeah, it's the same thing. If it were Ryan Fitzpatrick, I might be interested, but we just have no idea how Tua is going to adjust to the NFL. So I just say, let someone else deal with the potential range of outcomes, or, just leave him to your waiver wire, and then you can pick him up if you're desperate.
Okay, next name, start with you, Yates. How about Corey Davis? Came back, 10 targets, 6 catches, 35 yards, and a touchdown. Any interest in adding him?
Yeah, I have him at 8, so I think you can add him, but as nothing more than a 5% fab. I think that this was a product of the Tennessee Titans having to play from behind, which is probably not going to be the case most weeks. So not super excited about Corey Davis, but he has been producing when he's on the field. So I think the perception of Corey Davis has been this guy that's just been terrible for fantasy, but he's actually been pretty solid so far this year. So you can pick him up. You can play him as a low-end flex play, but again, I don't anticipate that the Titans are going to be in these, negative game scripts often.
Tags, you have a long history of advocating in favor of Corey Davis. How do you feel about him this week?
Yeah, I actually screwed up, and I have Higgins at 7. I have Corey Davis at 6. That was my bad. So Corey Davis is someone that I do believe should be rostered. I posted a stat on Twitter that he scored at least 11.9 PPR points in every game that he's played this year. Now, his targets have been there. Ryan Tannehill's been an extremely efficient quarterback with A.J. Brown continuing to... A.J. Brown's only going to get more and more and more attention as he continues to dominate defenses. So Corey Davis playing in that offense... especially with the Titans defense not playing particularly well. They're allowing plenty of points to the opponents, and it's leading to a lot more pass attempts than we saw last year out of Ryan Tannehill. I think there's enough volume to go around to support him, and that's why I think that Corey Davis should be over Rashard Higgins, because they're both the starters in 2 wide receiver sets. One plays for an offense that's throwing a little bit more, and he has a quarterback that's much more efficient on a consistent basis.
All right, last 2 names here. Let's ask you, Tags, any interest in either Curtis Samuel or Tre'Quan Smith?
Not Tre'Quan necessarily. They're against the Bears this week, so even if Michael Thomas is out, even if Emmanuel Sanders is out again, it's just not a very good matchup for wide receivers. Curtis Samuel is an interesting one against Atlanta. That's a Thursday night game.
Yep.
I already went through that game, and Curtis Samuel is a guy that I think that you can plug in as like a wide receiver 4 with some upside. He's had 11 targets over the last 2 games he's played. He's also gotten, I think, 4 or 5 carries. Mm-hmm. So he's getting a lot of opportunity, and the Falcons have really, really struggled. They moved Isaiah Oliver into the slot from the perimeter, and Oliver is the cornerback who has allowed more yards in his coverage than any other cornerback in the NFL. So I do think it's a solid matchup for him this week if you just need a 1-week fill-in. I don't ever want to rely on Curtis Samuel to do a whole lot, but he's not bad for like a guy that you just can plug in for 1 week.
How about you, Yates? Samuel or Tre'Quan Smith?
Yeah, I have Tre'Quan Smith at 7, and that's currently just based off of I have no idea what the heck's going on with Michael Thomas. So, he could be someone that is the starting. And again, with Emmanuel Sanders, we have no idea when he's going to come off the COVID-19 list. So right. We've seen players come off that pretty quickly, and then we've seen players stay on it for a long time. So no idea. So he's at 7 right now, but again, is nothing more than a 5% fab bid and someone that you can plug in as a low-end flex play next week against Chicago. And then Curtis Samuel, I have at 10 just because he doesn't present long-term upside. He's going to have to score in this matchup for you to feel comfortable plugging him into your lineup. And again, like Tag said, a wide receiver 4, that's what I mean when I say flex play, outside of wide receiver 3 range. So yeah, someone that you can plug in if you're absolutely desperate. But again, he's going to be one of those guys that's sitting there on your waiver wire. I guarantee it.
All right, guys, let's move on to QB here. But before we do, Yates, I don't think you ever gave your fab bid on Jalen Reagor. Can you just...
that would be 10%, Dan. Yep.
Sorry. All right. Sorry. I was like, man, that fell flat.
It took me a second. It took Tags.
It's my bad. My bad.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, listeners. They're not all winners, okay? I got a lot of shows to do.
Stop it.
Quarterback. Let's talk here. Tags. Anybody you're adding on quarterback here?
On the list that I'm looking at, absolutely not. But I will say that Teddy Bridgewater is available in a lot of leagues. He is someone that I think is a great streamer this week. I'll have him ranked as a low-end QB1. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is also someone that you can go to as a streamer. It really does suck that he lost Deebo Samuel, but knowing that they have a little bit less talent in the backfield right now, they're like shorthanded there. George Kittle should get tons of targets. Brandon Aiyuk has a plus matchup. They'll find a way to get it done. So Garoppolo's behind Teddy Bridgewater, but I think they're both good options.
How about you, Yates?
Yeah, second that. Teddy Bridgewater, if he is available, absolutely belongs in your starting lineup. I did a stashes and streamers video for our YouTube channel at youtube.com/fantasypros, and I said that, hey, go pick up Teddy Bridgewater if you've got space on your bench right now because he has an amazing matchup next week against Atlanta. But outside of that, I'm looking at guys like Derek Carr, Baker Mayfield, and Daniel Jones. I'm good.
Yeah. Nah. Not getting too excited. And again, that is a Thursday matchup with Bridgewater, so don't just sit around thinking you can go ahead and do it on Saturday or something like that. Get on that now. Let's go to tight end here. There are a couple interesting names. Let's start with you, tight end master Yates. Who's your number 1 pick up there?
Irv Smith. I've been, banging this drum for a couple weeks now, and I think that he has become a part of this offense. So, and if you are going to see Kirk Cousins continue to turn the ball over, and they're going to have to be playing from behind, they're going to have to throw the ball. I think that, and especially too with this matchup against Green Bay, I think you can plug in Irv Smith as a, he'll probably land at like tight end 14, tight end 15 in my rankings this week, and that's someone that you can stream.
Tight end, a bunch of options this week, Tags. Is Irv Smith number one for you?
He is my number one. If you look at his routes run throughout the season, so they go 16, 17, 17, 12, 31, 28. In those 2 weeks where he did play those run those routes, that ranked 8th among tight ends. So the opportunity is there. This Vikings team doesn't really have a third wide receiver. They haven't used their running backs a whole lot in the passing game. I know the Packers on paper look like they're one of the better teams against tight ends in terms of fantasy points allowed, but it comes down to lack of actual targets towards tight ends because the Packers have allowed over 10 yards per target to them. So I do think Irv Smith is someone that you can grab for a streamer this week and maybe someone that might actually be a regular starter in fantasy football moving forward.
All right, you guys are a little more excited about him than I am. I mean, I have him as a fine pickup. Again, I do think there are a few options this week at tight end, starting
Dan,
with
stop.
Trey
We already
Burton.
know who your number one is.
He's not my number one. I know who you're thinking of, and he's not. He's actually my number 3. So
how dare you?
Over there. It's number 1 is actually Trey Burton. Because, again, he's coming off bye. He's been heavily involved, at least 5 targets each of the 3 games since he's come back. He scored a couple touchdowns, especially, from the Wildcat. The receivers aren't going to get involved. We have talked ad nauseum about how the receivers are really not doing anything this year for Indianapolis. They get Detroit, I believe, this week coming off the bye. So he's a guy who I think, sort of like Irv Smith, you can put in there and rely on him. Generally speaking, not only this week, but probably going forward, he has an outside chance of being a tight end 1 for me. Let me ask you guys very quickly about other options out there. And I will mention Logan Thomas because I do. Look, we joked about it that week that I had him as my number 1 tight end pickup, which was like, I don't know, number 10 overall for all the joking that we do. And it was, look at all the targets. And Tag's response was, they're bad targets, which was true. And my response was, there sounds like there could be a quarterback change. And if so, those targets become not quite as terrible. Now, the targets aren't there as much as they were in the beginning of the season. He's basically locked in for 4 targets, but they're better. 60 yards, caught all 4 of them, 60 yards and a touchdown. 3 catches the week before, 42 yards and a touchdown. Kyle Allen is better than Dwayne Haskins. So is Logan Thomas. I know he has a bye this week. Of course, that's the big thing you really want to stream. But going forward, is there an outside chance, Tag, that you think that he could develop also into a potential tight end 1? Start with you, Tag.
I do. It's a very top-heavy offense. I mean, they have Terry McLaurin. They really don't have much else in the passing game. They target J.D. McKissick quite a bit. But there's really no number 2 receiver. Like Dontrell Inman is not someone that scares you, stealing targets. And the reason I think that under Kyle Allen, we've only seen 4 targets in back-to-back games for Logan Thomas is because the game scripts have been positive. That game they should have won against the Giants in Week 6. And then going to Week 7, obviously they smashed the Cowboys, so they didn't throw the ball a whole lot. In games where there's a negative game script, I think we're going to start to see more targets. And just like Terry McLaurin, I moved him up into borderline wide receiver 1 territory now that Kyle Allen has showed that he's basically the same quarterback he was with Carolina last year. And that means that Logan Thomas can be fantasy viable as well. Yes, he's moving up. I have it Irv Smith 1, Trey Burton 2, Logan Thomas 3. But again, it's really difficult to hang on to a tight end through their bye week, which is what you're going to have to do if you want Logan Thomas. But if you have room on your bench, I'm okay with it.
And can I assume, and I know, yes, I'll get to you in a second, because I know you specifically with a tight end on their bye, you're basically like, forget it. Yep. I'm not doing it, which is completely understandable. And what about Goedert here? We were excited about Goedert last week. It does sound now like it's probably week 10, and I guess there's a chance that Zach Ertz is going to be back then. So is Goedert just completely off your radar this week?
Who are
Tags,
you?
sorry. Yeah. For Tags. Is Goedert, since he's probably out until week 10 because he's probably not coming back this week, you've got a week 9 bye. Tags. How do you feel about Goedert? Is he not even worth a pickup for you anymore?
If you have an IR spot, yes.
Okay.
If you don't, it's really difficult for you. Again, we just talked about how it's difficult to hold on to a tight end through their bye week. So if you're talking about literally like a couple more bye weeks that you have to hold on to him, then it's probably difficult being in the heart of bye weeks that we are. So I have him as my number 5 pickup. But if you have an IR spot, I'd probably move him up to number 2 on my list.
Okay. All right. And how about you, Yates? Break down the other tight ends that we've talked about here.
Yeah, so Logan Thomas, and you mentioned it, Dan, it's just because of him being on his bye week that he's a streaming tight end for me. So, and if you can't stream him this week, then he's not high in my waiver wire rankings. But based on the argument that you guys had, I did bump him up my rankings. I moved him from 7 to 6. And then with Dallas Goedert, he's at 5 for me. He's not someone that I'm looking at, but you can add him in the hopes that he, potentially comes back early or whatever, but not super excited about adding him.
All right, that's fine. A couple of other names that I will just throw out there in case you are looking to potentially stream is Richard Rodgers. We saw him have a nice game last week, and he gets Dallas this week, which is, of course, a very good matchup. It's legitimately almost certainly 1 week of viability because they have their bye. Then you're going to have Goedert, perhaps Ertz. Again, Harrison Bryant had the big game last week. I assume that Austin Hooper is going to be out as well, so you could pick up him in a pinch. Let's go to our top 5 overall pickups. Let's start with you, Yates. 1 through 5 overall. Who are your guys?
Yeah, so looking at, excuse me, goodness. Looking at my overall rankings, I've got Tevin Coleman at 1, Carlos Hyde at 2, but obviously if we get word that Chris Carson is going to be out, Hyde would jump up. JaMycal Hasty at 3, again, prioritizing running backs here, and then Jalen Reagor and Rashard Higgins.
Okay, how about you, Tags?
I have Carlos Hyde number 1, Sterling Shepard number 2, Brandon Aiyuk number 3, Tevin Coleman number 4, and then Jalen Reagor at 5.
All right, we're all in the same ballpark here. Number 1 for me is Carlos Hyde. Number 2 is Brandon Aiyuk. Number 3 is Sterling Shepard. Number 4 is Rashard Higgins. And number 5 is Tevin Coleman. Let's get to our top QB and DST streamers. As always, I think we've pretty much covered QB, which is really Teddy Bridgewater if he is available.
Yep.
That's really your guy. Maybe Garoppolo, but it does sound like he's probably going to be down Deebo Samuel, which makes him not as enticing. And again, if you're in an absolute desperate pinch, maybe Carr against Cleveland, maybe Mayfield against the Raiders. But that covers it right with QB streamers, right, guys?
Yep.
Okay, how about DST? The Chiefs are already owned playing against the Jets. So, I don't know. There weren't too many good streamers out there for DST when I looked. But how about you guys? Let's start with you, Tags.
It was gross. I didn't even want to say the Tennessee Titans, but I did because they have generated 2 sacks in 3 of their last 5 games. Or 3 of the last 5 games. Joe Burrow has been sacked now, I think, 27 times through 7 games. So he's sacked a whole bunch. Jonah Williams, their starting left tackle, it seems like he's going to miss next week, going into their bye week. So that obviously is a downgrade. So I would think the Titans are probably going to generate 3-4 sacks in this game. You're hoping for turnovers. They have generated, I think, two or more turnovers in 5 of their 7 games. So, I mean, that's what you're hoping for when you're streaming a defense, I guess, just getting those floor with those sacks. But I don't feel great about it.
How about you, Yates?
Yeah, there really wasn't anyone that jumped off the page, so I went with who's playing Kirk Cousins, who might turn over the ball a couple times, and that's the Green Bay Packers. But, again, not feeling great about that recommendation.
Yes, that is also my not feeling great about that recommendation as well.
Christian McCaffrey has returned to practice for the Carolina Panthers. Just came across the board.
I'm calling it. No chance he plays this week on a Thursday game. I've said it from the beginning. It's going to be week 9.
No, I don't think so either, but that's good news.
Yep.
He's returning.
And he's going to be back this game, right?
He's going to be back.
No, they don't. Never mind. That's 13.
No, they don't. He had 13, right? Yeah, he's going to be back week 9. So he'll be there. Hold tight. One more week. If you roster Christian McCaffrey and you have survived this long, congratulations. You're going to be in really good shape in a couple of weeks, but probably not this week. Anyway, Green Bay is also my bid for basically the reasons that Yates said. All right, guys, let's finish it off with drop or keep. You know the deals. Let's start with you, Yates. Drop or keep, and this one is a Yates special. Drop or keep Cam Newton.
Oh, man. I think you still keep him. But he's going to be a low-end QB1 in my rankings this week. I don't think I'm going to be confident in recommending him.
Tags.
Yeah, we're really not carrying 2 quarterbacks anymore in league, so I'm willing to drop him.
Yeah, I agree. He's a drop. Man, we were talking yesterday. The throws that were coming out of his Tags, you called him a confidence, somebody based on confidence a lot. Man, his throws looked horrific last week, so I am a drop as well. Tags, drop or keep, Devin Singletary.
I mean, you keep him. He's still a running back that's getting, a dozen touches or so, but it's fading. I mean, he's a guy to hold on through bye weeks, but if you want to cut him after you're done with your bye weeks and you're not going to, he's not someone to stash on your bench, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yates, how about you?
Yeah, I agree. I was definitely down on Devin Singletary this week. I was recommending him as a sit everywhere. I think I had him at 31 or 32 in my rankings, so wasn't excited about him, but again, he's a running back, and you need these bye week fill-ins, so I'm kind of with Tags there. I'll keep him for right now, but I'm not excited about it.
I agree. It's a reluctant keep. Yates, drop or keep Laviska Shenault heading into his bye.
Heading into his bye, I'm fine dropping him if you need to pick up a Brandon Aiyuk and you need an option this week. I'm fine dropping Laviska Shenault for Aiyuk.
Tags.
That's exactly where I'm at too.
Ditto. Robert Tunyon, Tags, drop or keep.
Keep because of the matchup they have this week. Who the heck was it? Because I remember I was going through some stats.
Vikings.
Yeah, the Vikings have been smashed against tight ends, so I'll keep him for right now.
Yates.
I'm fine keeping him too if I have him, but if there's a better option available, again, he's in that same territory of a streaming tight end, so I'm fine if there's a better option.
This is the point where I go, whatever. He'll probably rank as a top 12 option for me this week, so you might as well keep him. Yates, drop or keep James White.
I'm fine keeping him. That usage last week was ridiculous. That'll get fixed.
Tags.
I'm keeping as well.
I'm fine to drop James White because there has
What
never
running backs are you going to have on your roster, Dan?
All right. If you
He's going to have Duke Johnson.
Hold on, I am Duke Johnson. 20% of your fab. Go get him. Tags. Let me ask you something. If you need a running back for this week, and James White is your option, and your other option is to drop him to pick up Carlos Hyde, are you rolling with James White?
I would grab Hyde if you needed a running back for the next week or two, especially if we hear on Carson. I would, but I have to imagine there's someone else on your bench you can cut instead.
I don't get the need to hold on to James White, so I'm a drop. I'm fine to be that way. Let's go to tags. Drop or keep Jerry Jeudy.
He's outside my top 50 wide receivers now, rest of season. So, you could drop him if you want to.
Yates.
The only thing that would keep me from dropping him would be Tim Patrick is now considered day-to-day. So if that turns into a more serious injury, then I'll keep Jeudy, but otherwise I'm fine dropping him.
Yeah, that's a fair point. If anything happens to Patrick, then you're by necessity you have to keep Jeudy, and Jeudy is incredibly talented, but I'm basically a drop otherwise. Yates, drop or keep Michael Gallup.
Drop him.
Tags.
You can drop Michael Gallup.
Really quick. Marcus, I think you pronounce his last name Mosher on Twitter, put this out earlier.
Yeah.
Dalton and Ben DiNucci combined for a total QBR quarterback rating last week of 7.5. The max is 158.3. 7.5.
Yeah, right. If you throw the ball into the ground, you get a 39.6 rating. I'm not kidding at all. And but the thing, I did quote that tweet, and I said something to the effect of the Cowboys quarterbacks were under pressure on 50% of their dropbacks, which is like
the whole team is terrible.
Yeah, so I know a lot of people are putting this on Dalton, and he hasn't played well, but that team is in complete disarray right now. Ezekiel Elliott, I keep dropping in my rankings. I got someone asked me earlier, would you trade him for Jonathan Taylor? And I said, I might. I seriously might.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade him for someone like Josh Jacobs because, well, that's just a bad situation altogether. But that's the territory that Zeke's in now. CeeDee Lamb's dropping, Michael Gallup's dropping, Amari Cooper dropped into wide receiver 2 territory. He still performed regardless, which is kind of astonishing considering how bad things have been there. But it's ugly, man. That team is just in there. I know that we're not supposed to be talking about this right now, but they're in such bad shape right now because the players in the locker room are already against the coaches. Like, they've already come out and said that basically the coaches don't adjust, they don't do anything. And Mike McCarthy, he was just hired this year. It's not an Adam Gase situation where you're counting down the days until the end of the year where you can fire him. They are stuck for the next couple of years. And basically they've shown just how important Dak Prescott was to the franchise, just how important, having the depth on your offensive line. Tyron Smith, when he left, it's like all of a sudden this offensive line is just terrible. So the Cowboys are in a very, very, very bad spot right now.
You guys remember, I don't know if Yates, you wouldn't because you and I didn't know each other, but Tags, when they hired Gase, I was happy about it just because the options at that point were Gase or McCarthy, and I thought that Gase would be easier to get away from after a year or two of failure, and that McCarthy would be like, well, they'll probably give him at least 3 years. So yeah, winning Jets, but the next player comes into this discussion, which was drop or keep Tags, CeeDee Lamb.
I'll keep him for right now.
Yates.
You got to keep him, but man, that was a disappointing performance.
Yeah, I'm keeping him as well, but I'm looking for other options to start in the near term. Yates, drop or keep Latavius Murray?
He's a running back, so it all depends on who you would have to drop him for, but I'm fine dropping him if you need to.
Tags.
Keep. I actually think you should go and trade for Latavius Murray right now.
Why?
Because he's a guy that he offers you flex value. I'll say maybe half the time you can kind of plug him in your lineup and you're going to get some touches out of him. But that's the value you have to give when trading for Latavius Murray. But what that doesn't factor in is he's still essentially a Kareem Hunt, where if Alvin Kamara were to miss time, he is a league winner. There are not many running backs in that territory that are league winners. So I was going through my rest of season rankings, and it's getting to the point now where you look at the running backs that are potential league winners that you can get at cost costs of like, even if I have to pay RB3 value for Latavius Murray, who gives a crap? That's fine. But he's a guy that if something were to happen, that's something that it's like, oh, you got lucky because there was an injury. No, you didn't.
Would you trade Devin Singletary for Latavius Murray?
I would 100%. Yes.
I think
immediately.
Really good example, Yates. Very well done.
You.
And I'm sorry that this came out into a longer discussion than we like. It was just interesting, Tags. And if you guys are watching at youtube.com/fantasypros, when you see like my face when Tag said, I'm going to go out there and going to trade for Latavius Murray, I sort of had this incredulous look on my face. I agree completely with the fact that he is probably, the single or at least one of the best handcuffs that you could have, because if anything happens to Alvin Kamara, he immediately becomes probably an RB1, but their next, I don't really see myself rolling him out there as a flex option, given that this was a matchup against Carolina with all their pass catchers out, and he, returned middling value. Then they have Chicago and the Bucs next. Like, it's really hard for me to see starting him, but as a handcuff, that's why I am also a keep. Let's finish it off here with a guy who was also a really high-end handcuff, but I'm not sure if he is anymore, given the team and Tags. That is Tony Pollard. Drop or keep?
Drop.
Yates?
Drop.
Correct. Drop. Yes, that's right. This is where we are. That is right. That is the correct answer, as you know. That is right. He's no longer the high-end handcuff that we want somebody like Latavius Murray or Alexander Mattison or Chase Edmonds to be. And again, Chase Edmonds, just to be clear, was not in this show, but because he's too widely rostered.
Yep.
But he is available in roughly 30% of leagues, so he needs to be picked up. Sorry to wait till an hour and 5 into it. But anyway, all right, that's it for today's show. Always great when the three of us are on. We really enjoy it, except for when Yates talks. Don't forget to check out our waiver assistant. That's right, Yates. I have to sneak in a dig at some point. Our waiver assistant over at fantasypros.com/myplaybook. Help with all your pickups, especially if you're in multiple leagues. We will be back tomorrow, as we always do, with another episode, and I will talk to you then.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Make sure to check out our featured videos as well. Also, make sure to click that red subscribe button to get notified when we post videos in the future.